T is here as well to take us through the main stories of the day in the papers. Of course, it's all about the German elections. Angela Merkel's win, if you call it a win.
That's right, a quote-unquote win, you might say. At least that's an idea we're getting from the papers around the world today. German paper Der Tagesspiegel calls it a bitter victory for Merkel as the far-right AfD party marches into parliament for the first time in over 7 decades. We're seeing a similar message from Le Soir, the Belgian paper as well. Merkel is victorious, the paper says, but very much weak. As a result, the editors at Le Soir say pro-Europeans are very anxious now. They don't know what's going to happen, and all eyes are on Merkel to see how she manages to fight the far right in future policymaking.
Yeah, the policymaking beginning with forming a new coalition, really, isn't it?
That's right, the new Germany. That's what the Hamburger Morgenpost, a local paper in Germany, says on its front page, albeit in the colors of Jamaica, you might say, because of this this famous coalition that's looking very probable in German parliament, a black, yellow and green coalition between Angela Merkel's centre-right party, the Liberals and the Greens. As I said, a scenario that's looking more and more likely.
And the papers are also looking at the disastrous results of the SPD. This is the second party, the German Socialist Party.
Well, the SPD is tumbling into an abyss, really. That's according to one writer from the Frankfurter Allgemeiner, a German paper, because it draws very, very stark similarities to what happened in France. Just like in the French elections, the German centre-left have essentially crashed and burned despite pinning their hopes on a charismatic pro-European candidate, Martin Schulz. The party now needs to look towards new beginnings, I'm quoting there. The author says Sigmar Gabriel's presidency was a time of transition. Schulz was an intermezzo for the party. Now the party must go in a new direction, that's of movement, moving forward. And for the writer, it begins with forming a formidable opposition in parliament.
Another big vote. There's the Kurdish referendum, of course, on independence, taking place today. Polls open for about 2 hours and 23 minutes now.
Well, Iraqi Kurds are voting, as you said, for their independence in this very, very important referendum. For the Iraqi paper Azaman, it's the point of no return. That's what it says on their front page there. Goodbye, Kurdistan, the paper says. This decision to even hold the referendum is a decisive turning point in Iraqi history. The results will not be legally enforceable, but it will lay down the path for the Kurds to negotiate in the future more autonomy with its oil-producing neighbours.
And it does come up big, great tension, really, with Iran and Turkey, doesn't it?
Well, not just Iran and Turkey, but especially Iran and Turkey. Yes, even the international community have warned that this vote could provoke further chaos, further violence, further instability in the region. The Hurriyet Daily, the Turkish newspaper, says on its front page, Iraqi Kurds head to the polls despite these warnings. And one columnist in the paper, which is generally considered to be quite liberal, has criticized this referendum. Yusuf Kanli says in this piece that no one can deny the right of statehood to a group of people, but that Iraqi Kurds cannot decide their future on their own. This is a decision concerning the whole country, and the whole country must vote. Now, on the flip side, in another Iraqi publication, a website called Rudo, they argue that now is the time for the Kurdish vote because waiting for a, quote, ideal time to discuss independence is never going to happen given how much chaos and instability there is in the region.
Dibs, you haven't mentioned Donald Trump, so let's put that right. Donald Trump's public spat with the NFL after he lashed out at players who kneeled during the national anthem.
That's right, and it sparked a movement called Take a Knee on Twitter, hashtag Take a Knee. About 200 players kneeled during matches yesterday to protest racial injustice and object to Donald Trump's foul-mouthed tirade against NFL players who take a knee. USA Today's editors called the, quote, divider-in-chief's actions indecent. They condemn him for using the, quote, bully pulpit of the presidency to rain aspersions on someone who dares to dissent. Now, what's really interesting with USA Today is they always publish a counterpoint of view, and if you read this counterpoint of view, it's worth reading because it's really interesting. The counterpoint of view agrees with Trump's comments that the athletes should be fired for kneeling. The writer says Donald Trump is being frank and he's showing leadership, and they really hail that.
OK, let's move on to another protest, if it is a protest. This time it's from the British actor Colin Firth against Brexit.
That's right, Colin Firth has adopted Italian citizenship, Stuart.
Oh, wow.
Now, he's the most quintessential of British men, next to you, of course.
Oh, thanks.
And he's actually become an Italian citizen, he says, in part due to family reasons. His wife is actually Italian. His children were born there. He was married there. So he's got a close connection to Italy. But Also, because of political uncertainty following Brexit in Europe, as a result, he adopted nationality. He insists that he still remains and looks British, however.
Yes,
this is a huge move, though, considering that Colin Firth won an Oscar for playing a British king. So it seems quite unpatriotic, if you think about it.
He's just Mr. Darcy to me, or perhaps it's Mr. Darcy. I don't know. Perhaps. Thanks a lot. Tip with the papers on France 24.